Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to HC Live. My name is Colleen Baker. I am a producer here at the Houston Chronicle. First and foremost, thank you all for joining us. We are very excited to have Mayor Annise Parker and Dr. Letitia Plummer, the candidates in the primary for Harris County Judge, on with us today, as well as our Harris County reporter, John Lomax, of course. First, I want to ask, I see someone already saying good afternoon. That means I think the chat is working, but let us know where in Texas or in Harris County are you currently watching us live from? Are you in the Galleria area like John and I are at the Houston Chronicle office? Are you in Montrose, Atascocita, Humble, excuse me. I see Cypress and Med Centers tuning in, Bel Air, downtown Houston, Kingwood. Okay, great. So that means that the chat is working. Automatically start right now submitting your questions for Mayor Parker and Dr. Plummer. We are going to get to as many as we possibly can in the later half of the segment. We want to know what kind of issues you're worried about, what type of context you need for certain issues or themes that are currently happening in Harris County. So also, as a friendly reminder, we do these very frequently, mostly weekly, and they will be put up on our YouTube channel at the Houston Chronicle dedicated channel. So you will be able to rewatch this, send it to your friends, fellow voters, that sort of thing. So real quick, obviously, these two women are just powerhouses. I know if you are tuning in, you probably are familiar with both of their work. But just for a quick second, as you start submitting your questions, I want to do just a little bit of a bio for each of them. Mayor Parker obviously was the 61st mayor of Houston. She's the only person in the city to have served as mayor, controller, and a council member, kind of spearheading some key initiatives such as Rebuild Houston and a million others, and was a member of President Obama's task force on climate preparedness, chair of the Conference of Mayors Criminal and Social Justice Committee, and a Homeland Security Advisory Council member. There's a lot I'm not getting to, but that's just a little bit of a taste. Dr. Plummer is a dentist. I myself come from a dental family, so I might have a little bit of a bias there, but small business owner, dentist of over 25 years, former member of the Houston City Council, representing the at-large position for from 2020 to 2025. And obviously priorities include a million different things, from expanding Harris Health System to launching youth mental health partnerships with schools and creating family support programs and different programs for addiction and mental health. So these women are extremely accomplished civic servants. And so I already see the questions coming in. John Lomax, our Harris County reporter, has covered these issues day in and day out here at the Chronicle. So I think without further ado, John, you should take it from here.
Thanks for that, Colleen. I want to thank our audience and our candidates for joining us today. We have a lot to talk about, and so I think we'll just go ahead and dive in. The way this is going to work is I'm going to begin alphabetically. I'm going to ask a question to both of you, and we'll start with Mayor Parker on the first question, followed by Councilmember Plummer, and then for the next question, we'll do reverse order, and we'll just kind of keep going like that. So for my first question, we're going to start with a tougher one. You guys both come from the city. A lot of your political background is in the city, where there are contribution limits, there are blackout periods, there are a lot of kind of, rules and regulations surrounding campaign finance. To a large degree, the same is not the case in Harris County elections. I know that there are limitations to your power, as Harris County judge, but my question today, and again, we're going to begin with Mayor Parker, is would you support some sort of limitations or some sort of regulations being added to the county's legislative agenda and lobbying the state to kind of change the laws and rules, or maybe establishing an ethics commission, as has been done in several other counties? Is that something you would support? Why or why not, Mayor Parker?
So I think an ethics commission is an excellent idea, and I would be absolutely interested in exploring that. I don't know that we have as you pointed out, all of my career was in offices with very strict contribution limits and blackout periods. But I don't know that we have a problem in Harris County with either contribution limits or corruption. I'm willing to wait until I get in and see if there's a problem. 18 years in office, there was never a scandal on my watch. I will lead with integrity and transparency, but let me get in and see if there's a problem. And by putting an ethics commission in place, I think we would be prepared if something does arise. I'm not interested in sending any piece of legislation to Austin that would give anyone up there the opportunity to attack Harris County again.
For that, Mayor Parker, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Councilmember.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely would be supportive of an ethics committee. I do believe, honestly, John, though, I do believe that because there are no limits on donations, I think there are challenges. I mean, what we've seen, some of the research has shown that 90% of the donor base typically get, a lot of the procurement opportunities. And so whether that be on purpose or not, it doesn't really matter. I don't think that there's anything, improper happening at the county level. But I do believe that when someone's able to write a $50,000 check to someone, just naturally, there's some conversations. So, if I'm blessed to be able to be in this position, I would definitely want to strengthen our procurement office. I would want to put more measures in place. I would be open. I've served now with limits more deeply. I will be open to looking at some limits there as well. But I think, what we did at the city of Houston, what I did at the city of Houston was be able to do, when we worked with, co-ops, we were able to put carve-outs in place that were legally supportive by state guideline, obviously. And we did it on our rotation. So as people were getting bids and contracts, we were able to rotate them through to allow everyone, not only your larger businesses, but also your mid-sized to small businesses to be a part of the conversation. And so, I was really focused on procurement opportunities at the city of Houston, and I would want to do the same thing at the county level as well.
Thank you for that answer, Councilmember. I think we're getting a little bit of it's a little choppy. I'm not sure if we can do anything about that, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next question for now. I think we're going to keep it limited to kind of some issue-based questions for the time being. And so beginning with you, Councilmember, what are your thoughts on the Bent Hob expansion and the kind of associated condemnation of an 8.9 acre tract of Herman Park land? Is this just a kind of a grim necessity, or are there other options that we should be exploring?
No, I definitely think there are other options, John. Can you hear me? Is that okay? Can you hear me okay? Good. Okay. What I often have seen when it comes to decisions, oftentimes decisions are made well before it becomes a community. We saw that on the I-45 expansion. When we see conversations about the Astrodome, like by the time the decision comes to us to make the decision, community's not engaged. And so one thing that I really believe didn't happen enough on the front end is the conversations and community engagement. I know that Dr. Portia is saying that, a lot was done, but I, in a lot of ways, disagree. We did pass, a bond to get resources done at LBJ. We've fallen short financially. Now we're talking about acquiring land, parkland that is, with the oversight of the conservatory, from Herman Park Conservatory, and there's some challenges there. I believe, Commissioner's Court is happening right now, and they're having these conversations. It creates some level of engagement from the community first, and then look at how we can. I think there's some other options other than taking those tracks from Herman Park, though, in terms of how we should move forward on that.
Thank you for that answer, Councilmember. Mayor Parker, your thoughts on this?
I agree that there should have been more public conversation before this, just got dumped on the community. I have a couple of concerns, and I do believe that there should be a win-win solution out there, but I have some broader concerns, and that is that this expansion of Bent Hob doesn't appear to be in alignment with the plan laid out for Harris Health as to where the needs are in the community and future expansion. Clearly, Bent Hob needs an overhaul, but I don't know that we need to overbuild another tier 1 trauma center next to the one that's already there. Bentob needs improvement, clearly, and we need more Tier 1 trauma centers in the region rather than overbuilding there in the Texas Medical Center. We have hospital deserts on the east side of Houston. We have a severe need for a new Tier 1 trauma center in Southwest Houston. Are we really doing what is best for the overall community? Are we simply focusing on, oh, we need more space for Bentob, and this is the easiest solution to do it? And then finally, I will say that parkland is irreplaceable. So we have to be very, very careful before we de-accession any of it.
I appreciate your answer there. Okay, now beginning again with you, Mayor Parker. What are your thoughts on the current situation with the Harris County Jail? What are some potential solutions that should be explored to kind of address the capacity issues and the associated expenses related to outsourcing?
So one of the things has already happened, and that is the new district attorney and his team have done a better job of moving things through the process. And if if the judges pick up the pace, if the district attorney's office picks up the pace, so people aren't lingering in jail, we can reduce the head count. The jail is showing stress. It's showing its age, and it needs improvements. But rather than building a new jail, I'd rather focus on let's overhaul and fix what we have, and perhaps think of something completely transformative, which is building a separate facility so that the sheriff can move those mentally ill prisoners that he has out into a more treatment-oriented setting and keep I would say, the bad guys in jail where they belong. Every county judge in Texas, every county jail in Texas is the largest mental health provider in that county. And we are exacerbating problems both in the non-mentally ill population and those that are suffering from mental illness by housing those populations together. It's not safe for the jailers. It's not safe for the prisoners. And if you do it right, you could potentially create a facility with excess capacity that we could open up to other agencies. We have a severe lack of mental health beds in the region, and we could be part of a broader solution, reduce headcount in the jail, and then reduce those costs of outsourcing prisoners all at the same time.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Councilmember, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely believe there's some challenges with our jail system. I mean, as you know, we're having some issues trying to get, the state to say that it's okay in the way in which that we are taking care of the jails. We've got about 9,000 inmates in there. One of our largest concerns is the outsourcing, as you mentioned, and about 1,500 of those folks are being outsourced. 80% of the people in jail have some level of mental health challenges, which is a really high number. And so I think that if we could figure out a way to look at nonviolent offenders, look at some diversion programs, maybe some early trial releases, and really get them the mental health support that they need, would be something that I would be incredibly open to. One piece as well is a lot of people that are there, may not need to be incarcerated. If we could look at some creative way, there's a justice to workforce, model that some people use to actually allow them to get some workforce development and be able to, be good stewards of society. And so, there's some clear challenges. I think that we need to look at this differently. I am not in any way supportive of building a new jail. That in my mind is not an option. We have got to invest more in the mental health side, and there are ways of doing that. We can, separate the floors. We're lots of folks are talking about, increasing detention officers there. Once again, I know that we need to be compliant. I know there's some ratio concerns, but we really only need to drop the jail down about 10%. And if we've got 80% of them, they're having mental health issues, are all of them violent offenders? Can we figure out a way to decrease that jail population so we can at least have the state to give us, the check of approval in terms of how we're running our jail system, but also allow these folks to have some level of success, once they're out of jail and not be incarcerated.
All right, Councilmember, we'll go ahead and start with you again. I think it's sort of related follow-up question for both of you. Bail reform has been a kind of major issue in Harris County. Residents have consistently polled that crime is one of their most, pressing issues right now. How do you balance, and this is more of a philosophical question, I know you're limited in what you can do, but how do you balance the needs for, victims to feel that they are, that there will be justice with, the need for somebody or the, kind of belief that somebody should not sit in jail just because they don't have enough money to get out?
Is this my first?
Sorry about
Plummer?
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So this is actually one of my most favorite topics, to be honest with you. We often look at crime as the end result. We're very reactionary when it comes to crime. And I really believe that the root causes of crime should be a larger conversation. And I do believe that's everyone's responsibility. The 34 cities within the county, Houston obviously being the most, the largest one. If people have jobs that pay fairly, and if people, are not discriminated against, if they've been incarcerated before and are not able to get an apartment or get a job, or people that don't have the access to a solid education. A lot of the things that that Kim Og did, what HISD takeover is happening in terms of destroying our public school system. Those are real challenges, and those lead up to crime. And so I think if we can shift a bit and think about crime in a different way, I think that, and look at more of the root causes of them, I really believe we'd be more successful. And so, that's kind of one of the positions I want to take. I really want to look at education, our educational system. I want to increase apprenticeship programs with our unions and with our companies. I want to look at, ensuring that if young people don't want to go to college, that there are vocational options, for them. And then really, I know that we don't often talk and relate, but childcare support and childcare education is really important because they're ultimately going to get to a point to where they'll be in the workforce. So I believe we need to back it up a little bit and just look at root causes. We've got to allow people to live in safe and habitable spaces. We've got to pay people fairly that work, and give that support that they need. And I think that if we can allow people to thrive in the way that they need to, that I honestly believe that you'll see crime decreasing. And so, that's kind of, my take. But obviously, the DA's office previously under the previous, under Kim Og, I think it was a real challenge. I think bail reform was a challenge. I think we're moving in the right direction, but I think there's a lot more work that needs to happen. And looking at root causes would be my first initiative.
And to you, Mayor Parker?
Everybody deserves to be safe in their home and in community. While crime is objectively down, the feeling that crime is still a huge problem in Harris County means that it is a huge problem in Harris County. Unfortunately, the state has preempted a lot of the ability of anyone at the local level to do anything about who stays in jail and how long they stay in jail. And in fact, the legislature has reduced the ability of our criminal court judges to the flexibility of our criminal court judges. Clearly, Harris County has the opportunity to be involved in victim assistance efforts. I mean, we focus on excuse me, on like the public defender's office and the things that we do to make sure that the system is safe inside. But we often forget the people who are victims of crime and the need to support those victims of crime. I agree with the council member that there are a lot of things that we can and should be doing across this region to help keep people out of the criminal justice system. And while it is not a core function of Harris County, I'd certainly be willing to explore as many options as are available.
Okay. I appreciate your answer there. We're going to begin with you again. Mayor Parker, we're running a little low on time for this portion of today's event, so I think we'll kind of move on to more broad questions, beginning with I think there's been a big discussion about the identity and the values of the Democratic Party following the 2024 presidential election. What is the future of the Democratic Party from your perspective? Does it need change? Does there need to be changes made to the platform and the messaging, or do we need to double down on that? For you, Mayor Parker.
Well, as someone who has been involved in the Democratic Party for decades, I'm a former Democratic precinct chair and a former co-chair of the Lesbian Gay Democrats of Texas, an activist Democrat. Uh, there's nothing wrong with our positions. There's nothing wrong with our platform. We are not doing a good job of messaging that. We have always been the party of the working class. We've always been the party of advocacy for the rights of minorities. We are the party of inclusion and frankly, the party of hope. And we need to reinvigorate that debate and those discussions. It's been very exciting to see our two candidates here for the United States Senate and the messaging that they're putting out, uh, getting back to basics. It's the economy, stupid. It is about the day-to-day lives of people in this community. And as a proud Democrat, I'm happy to see that we have gone back to the basics at the national level and at the state level. And I hope to do it down here as well when I'm on the ballot in November.
To you, Councilmember.
Yeah, John, I think it's a great question. Democrats want to be seen. I mean, visibility, right? Like who they are, what they stand for, what they need to be able to thrive. They just want to be seen. And it's not seen from like a physical, like color perspective, right? It's about what they actually say. And Democrats have always stood for that. We have always been, we've been inclusive. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. And I think that message oftentimes doesn't resonate as much as it really, really should. I believe that we are moving in the right direction. I think that Democrats are all kind of coalescing. And obviously we see this, oftentimes based on who the president is, our voices get a bit, get a bit louder. But we want to, I think also Democrats we're tired of the visuals. We don't want to march anymore. Like we just feel like no one's really listening to us, and we have to be so loud to get it done. And although we will come together and we will march and we will have candle visuals and all that, Democrats don't feel like anything's really changing. And so what my hope for the party is that we're saying, okay, listen, we're hearing you, we're seeing you, and we're not going to do politics as usual. We're actually going to put people in office that actually want to make things happen and get things done. And I think that's what we're seeing at the state level. I think we're seeing that with our candidate for governor. I mean, we've got some really great candidates that are pushing a different message. And that's a message of hope. But not only that, that you're being seen for what you need, and that we're not going to use government limitations to stop us from making the decisions. In my short time as council member, and I'm so glad I wasn't there any longer, because I think that sometimes you kind of get in that bubble and you make these decisions based on you being on the inside. I think me being on the outside for such a long time and having such a level of community organizing and just advice from community, they're ready. They're feeling I think they feel like this is our last chance to make this thing happen. And I'm with them on that. I think that, if we can just continue on with the ideals that Democrats typically carry, but find people that actually run those up the field, I think that's what they're looking for. And I'm excited for the future. I really, really am. I know that we've obviously feel beat down a little bit, but we are coming together in ways that, I really haven't seen, as an adult. And I'm excited for what the future of our Democratic Party looks like.
Appreciate your answer on that, Councilmember. We're going to begin with you again. So, for the past 8 years, the county has been under majority Democratic leadership and recently supermajority. What do you think we have learned in the past 8 years under some things that moving forward?
Yeah, so I really do believe that our county judge has highlighted more of the social challenges that the county could really influence in a way that didn't happen under Ed Emmett. Oftentimes people say, well, what's the job of the county judge? Like, what are you supposed to do? And everyone says road, bridges, parks. I mean, that's kind of infrastructure, all those things. I think one thing that Judge Hidalgo did was she shined a light on people. and putting things in place that actually affected people, and being more preventive than reactionary. And I commend her, commend her for that. And so, if I am, like I said, if I'm blessed to be able to be your next county judge, I want to improve on the social highlights that she put forward, and find ways, obviously, to get them paid for. But if we can change people's lives, and we can really change the way in which the county moves, and take some of the burden off, the fiscal burdens, off of the county, by making people, we say it all the time, teach them how to fish, right? So take those burdens off and really give them the opportunity to take care of themselves and take care of their families. And at the end of the day, that's all people want to do. They want to be able to be self-sufficient, take care of themselves. And I think that Judge Hidalgo did a really good job of bringing those things forward. During COVID, we experienced something that, we didn't realize how important housing was. I mean, we knew housing was important, but when housing was your school and your work and all the other things, the highlighting of the deplorable conditions a lot of people live in was highlighted, and we did something about it. Looking at the immigrant community, not being able to, so I think that looking at those social challenges and kind of moving away a little bit and I know that's our job. And so I'm very clear on what the job is, but the highlight of the social challenges, I think, makes the county move in the direction that we need to go.
Thank you for that answer, Mayor Parker.
One thing that has clearly improved in Harris County is the transparency of government. I can remember a time when the commissioners' court meetings, if they lasted 15 minutes, you were surprised. Everything was done in executive session. Everything was done in private. There's much more openness. There's much more transparency, and there's the ability of citizens to see more of the inner workings of county government. I'm very excited about that. I also believe that it's important to pivot a little bit from those base functions of county government. It's public safety, public health, public infrastructure, but that public infrastructure is parks and libraries and housing and the building the economy. Local government is the platform on which people build their lives, and having commissioners more publicly focus on those elements of county government, I think, has been transformative and important. And we need to execute on the basics, but we need to continue on the path of public focus on how do we continue to make this a region that thrives? How do we continue to put more housing on the ground so that young people who are locked out of the housing market now have an opportunity to buy that starter home and move up into the middle class? Those are the kinds of things that I don't think the county ever really thought about before. And then finally, if we don't keep water out of people's houses, we're not going to be able to do any of this. And so one of our highest priorities has to be flood mitigation and beginning to move those flood projects out the door.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we're running a little low on time, but I think we'll get one last kind of lightning round in. Who is a kind of Houston area or Texas politician whose leadership style you admire? That can be current or former. We'll begin with you, Mayor Parker. Just tell us who and briefly why.
So my political hero locally was always former council member Eleanor Tinsley. You would be hard pressed to find any mayor who did more to transform the city of Houston than council member Tinsley. But her influence went beyond that. She helped lead the charge to integrate Houston Independent School District. She's the reason that we don't smoke in public buildings here. Helmets on kids, the Spark Park program. She puts the lie to the idea that a council member cannot be effective and cannot pass legislation. And she reshaped the city of Houston, and she did it with grace and class and a string of pearls and a steel magnolia temperament, and I've always admired that.
Okay, thank you. Council member?
I would say Barbara Jordan. I think she was someone that at a time where it was really hard for people of color, for Black people to be able to thrive, I think she created an avenue. I think that she was solid in her decisions. She was unemotional. She was targeted in how she executed. She just resonates power and strength, and she influenced so many people. I know in the Black community, especially of a woman of color. I mean, she definitely inspired me. But she left a framework for us to be able to move on, and what she did was just transformational.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Colleen now for some audience questions.
Absolutely. We have had a ton of questions come in, so I am going to jump straight to them. The first one theme that definitely is coming across, a couple of questions came in regarding ICE, right? Nationally, I think it's the thing that we cannot avoid talking about. So, Mayor Parker, first to you, can you speak to, what's going on nationally and if, Houston has any cause for concern or how you in this position, if elected, would need to handle this type of really gravity-stricken topic?
Trump has unleashed an army of untrained, undisciplined, and unaccountable secret police on blue cities and blue states. The reason it hasn't happened here is that we're in a red state, and there but for the grace of God. This is not about immigration enforcement. President Obama managed to deport some more than 3 million people during his tenure in office without stormtroopers taking over the streets of a major American city and without murdering people in the streets. This is something that we all have to push back on as individuals, as public officials, and just as people who care about our fellow human beings. That said, directly as a public official, our elected leaders down here have certain responsibilities. The law requires certain things of us, and we have to make sure that we don't go one step beyond what is legally required for us to do. We need to work with all of the local law enforcement here to make sure that citizens still feel safe in approaching the sheriffs, the police officers who are well-trained, disciplined, and understand what their job is, and that we don't inadvertently become ICE enforcers. So we need to push back at the local level, and the federal level. The county needs to litigate as aggressively as possible whenever the feds start to overstep, and clearly they will if they continue this trend. And we also have to be, as public officials, part of the accountability network. I've attended protests, a lot of protests over the years. I attend protests whether or not I necessarily agree with everything that's going to be said from the platform, because I want to be present as a public official in community, as part of as an observer, as someone who can say, I was there, I know what's going on, and then hopefully, if there's anything that begins to go sideways, have the ability to step up and step in. I think that's part of being an elected official, and that's something that I did in my previous roles, and something I would absolutely do again. But we have a moral imperative. Trump is dismantling democracy here in America, and the soul of our country is at stake.
Dr. Plummer, I want your opinion on ICE as well. What are your current thoughts on how you would maybe, approach the issue if it were to, it clearly already is affecting Houstonians, even though we aren't, say, in Minnesota, but I want your thoughts as well.
No, absolutely. My last days as council member, I attempted to put forward an amendment on ICE. And I was able to get one signature. We have Prop A, which we can put things on the agenda. And it really, so we got to create some distinction here. The sheriffs and the constables have a different relationship because they're more mandated by the state. HPD, and I'm speaking of HPD because, we're 2.5 million people within the city of Houston, which is almost half the county's population. So, whatever we do in Houston obviously will, incredibly influence the way in which they interact. HPD has an opportunity based on general order, not going against the Senate bill, that we can give them discretion. And I put an ordinance forward to have that conversation around the horseshoe, to reevaluate the discretion, to give officers, if they see ICE hit from NCIS, do they have to call? If it's just a missed court date, do they have to report it to ICE? Do they have to disclose where that person is? And there are 12 levels basically of discretion that they can create. If we were able to get that passed, and hopefully somebody on council will bring that forward, if for nothing else, for a conversation, a public conversation, which I think that people deserve to have right now. And if we could change how they make the discretion, then maybe we won't see that. Listen, I know the mayor says the ICE is not here. ICE is here. ICE is present. They are on the ground. You're seeing the things that are happening at city council right now. They are here. And although they're not plummeted on, in Texas because we're conservative, Houston is blue in a lot of ways. And so we are more progressive, not maybe as much as Austin is, right? But we are definitely more blue. And they are present. And I don't think that, Mayor Whitmire is really talking about the true relationship of HPD and ICE. And I'm really hoping and challenging my council members to please bring that ordinance forward, have a public conversation so that people can once again, feel seen and heard, to see what we can do. I know that our officers, probably the majority of them, don't want to create any challenges, but people are being, detained unnecessarily. Traffic stops are a big issue. That was a part of my ordinance. We need to have those conversations so people are not detained unnecessarily.
Absolutely. I also a wide-reaching question, but I do think this is a great point. A 61-year-old audience member tuning in is just asking, and I'll start with Dr. Plummer. Can we agree that generational change is needed at all levels of government? I say this as a 61-year-old. You two ladies, obviously, I would say, are out of the mold. You're breaking your, typical stereotype of what a politician would look like. I think that's fair to say. But generational change, I think, is something that's front and center of the topic. What does that mean to you, and how you would have hoped to affect generational change with this role if you were to be elected? Dr. Plummer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the average age of the county is 34, believe it or not. It's definitely a younger generation. I'm 55, so it's definitely a younger generation. I think, it's multiple things. Technology is changing so rapidly. So I think that as a county judge, making sure that we're hiring people that are a bit younger, that know how to communicate with younger folks, but obviously older folks need to be communicated with as well. I think that one thing that age does do, and this is why I kind of feel like I'm in that sweet spot, is that I've lived long enough to have enough challenges to know what those challenges are, but I'm also young enough to be able to stay there for a couple of terms and see the fruition, right? See all the work that we want to do and execute that. I do think that people want to have people that are really more innovative, bold, but also solidly grounded enough to be able to make solid decisions and be able to be more, be forward thinking. And so, does age really matter all the time? Maybe not necessarily, but in my mind, I think that when you're a bit closer to the population base, I think that it does stand there. It does stand to reason that there's a little bit more connectivity. Like, I understand the transportation situation. Like, I was screaming about, us, basically halting the university line. I know that my kid was riding the university line. Like, he needed, he would have been riding the university line rather. And seeing that lack of transportation equity is something that I definitely understand, because I've got children that age, right? And I know where things should go. And so I think that, from that perspective, I believe that having someone that's closer to the average age of the county would be beneficial to move things forward.
Mayor Parker, what are your thoughts on kind of generational change? And I will open it up a little bit as well to representation, as well. Generations and representation being different.
So the council members in our 50s, I'm in my 60s. We both represent generational change as far as the county's concerned when you consider who the current county judge is. But more seriously, experience matters. The county judge is the emergency management, in charge of emergency management in a crisis. Experience matters. How you've handled crises before, how you've dealt with, I've had flood and fire and ice. Fortunately, not a hurricane while I was mayor, but certainly in my time in office. all of those experiences add up, and that experience matters in a crisis. But we're the figurehead in a way. We're the elected officials. Government happens in the bureaucracy. Government happens with the people you choose to lead agencies, to carry out policies, to do the research. And it's not about just us as individuals. It's our judgment. It's our ability to attract the best and the brightest, to convince them that Harris County is the place they want to work, and then to unleash that potential to make lives better down here. And I absolutely believe that I can do that.
Okay, moving on to a little bit of a different topic. Wide open question here for Dr. Plummer first. Houston ISD, the takeover. I know it's not necessarily the Harris County judge's job to be involved in HISD directly, but Dr. Plummer, can you speak to sort of your general thoughts on the takeover and how you would work with that relationship as it currently stands with the superintendent and the students currently enrolled?
So Colleen, although the HISD was not a role of the county, like I mentioned before, those are the future workforce of the county, right? Those graduates. And so I was completely against the takeover. I was completely against the HISD bond for many reasons. I think Mike Miles is just destroying HISD at this point. We did have some interactions with him as a council member. He did come and do a presentation. What he has done and dismantle our education system is devastating. And now you're seeing that they're doing takeovers in other areas in Texas as well. And so, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned that they're not hiring accredited teachers there. He's not allowing the importance of having certified teachers there when they've worked so hard to be in the classroom. They're like detention centers at this point, and it's unfortunate. And so, these are our young people. They've got to live. They've got to experience. They've got to be able to grow, and they've got to have the teachers change my lives. I mean, I'm a product of the public school system. I still see my teachers right now. Yeah, they're my patients. Some of them are my patients. Like, they have fostered they're the reason I am who I am right now. And so not being able to allow teachers to teach in the way that they need to in the classroom it's not acceptable. And so I'm ready for Mike Miles to leave and get the hell out of Houston, to be honest with you, and figure out a way we can do this a little bit differently.
Mayor Parker, what are your thoughts?
Mike Miles' tenure can't end fast enough. He is squeezing the life out of HISD schools. My kids attended HISD schools. I have grandkids that are about to move into the system, and I want those schools to be there for them. But I also think we need to understand the circumstances that led to the takeover. We had a chair of the HISD board that was engaged in a bribery scandal. We had board members, Hispanic and Black board members, who wouldn't meet at the same time and were trying to hold rump sessions to pass motions where the other side wasn't present. We were completely dysfunctional. In my time in office, the state took over North Forest ISD. They came in surgically. They removed the leadership. They actually merged the North Forest schools into HISD. Those schools are thriving now, and so we had a history of takeovers where the state did the right thing. Now this has been taken over by right-wing ideologues, and this is designed to dismantle the system as we know it. And unfortunately, the state took a bad situation and made it worse. I was hoping that the state would come in and act as they had in the past successfully, and I was wrong. And this is a disaster, and the faster they can turn it back over to an elected, accountable school board and remove the Mike Miles dictatorship, the better.
Excellent. Another question comes in that's very specific and it's very good. Corporations have always had an outsized influence on policy in Texas, regardless of party and power. What measures do you propose to increase transparency and prevent cronyism at both the financial level, specifically with contracts and permits, and at the policy level with who is driving agenda items and drafting ordinances? Mayor Parker, I'll start with you.
So I think that question is more targeted toward the state, but if I follow it correctly, no, outside entities should not be drafting policies or ordinances for Harris County, just as they didn't for the city of Houston. We did our work in-house, and that's why you bring good people into government, and they do the work. You also set up. Again, the question's a little sideways to the county, but you set up procurement systems in the county to make sure that we rotate through vendors. You set up transparency and accountability oversight over contracting processes. All of those designed to make sure that most companies have the access to the work that is available, and that no one has too much influence over what happens. But the most important thing is that you don't turn over the work of government to the private sector. And I'm actually not a huge fan of a constant barrage of consulting organizations coming in and evaluating the work. You can spend an awful lot of money on really high-priced consultants, giving you consultant speak and not actually getting the work done.
Dr. Plummer, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree on the consultant side. I mean, oftentimes they will spend millions. We saw this in the city, spend millions of dollars, and then we won't even implement anything, any of the recommendations. And so at least if we do hire consultants to come in and do the work for us, we have to make a commitment to people that we're going to execute. And oftentimes too, what happens is that we do it, and it's in year, let's say, year 2025, and then we don't try to implement it till 2027, and then everything's different in 27, and so then they have to go back and do it again, and we just find ourselves just spending so much of taxpayer dollars to try to get answers and not implementing at the time what's most appropriate. But this kind of goes back to the previous question. I would definitely be open to let me back up and say this. The county judge doesn't get a resource of money, right? Most of the money is being spent out of the commissioners, different commissioners. And I think that there should be some level of understanding in terms of how those dollars are spent. What we did, like I said, what we did before, at the city level, and putting in a rotation, allowing everyone to be a part of the process, I think is really important. And, and I do believe that donation, these contribution levels have a level of influence. And so, I would really be open to looking how that's done. And then I would, be very interested in looking at our procurement department and really having some level of where that we're doing it the same way each time, and not doing it in different ways based on who those people are doing business with the city. Because we spend obviously, we spend billions of dollars in those spaces, and I think that doing it in a more fair and transparent, equitable way would be necessary. I hear it from small businesses all the time, especially small engineering firms that just don't get a bite at the apple.
Mm-hmm. And on the topic of transparency, a question, different topic, but transparency specifically with flooding projects and water conservation has come up in the questions. I'll start with you, Mayor Parker. Can you speak to your specific approach to those two things, water conservation and flooding, specifically in the vein of transparency?
So I've spent actually a lot of time in the sustainability space. It was something that we were quite proud of when I was mayor of Houston, and we focused on leading by example, so that the city projects, city buildings were. I actually created the position of sustainability director for the city of Houston, so that internally we could set a standard that we would hope that the private sector would follow. And then we also used some federal grant dollars to create specific incentives so the private sector would make their facilities greener, that they would make their their buildings less energy expensive and those sorts of things. But I also am the person who pushed through the drainage fee for the city of Houston. Drainage projects are critical to uh, again preventing flooding in an area that flooded before there was a single human being here, and that we've only made the situation worse. I'm proud of the creation of Rebuild Houston, where we dedicated funding specifically to doing drainage projects so that we could jumpstart the process. One of the problems we have right now is that voters allocated more than $2 billion of bond authorization to Harris County to do flood control, flood mitigation projects. And there was another almost $5 billion worth of projects all told with leveraged dollars, and those projects have stalled out. We desperately need to get those started again. So, that question married, conservation with flooding. They're two fundamentally different things, but both speak to one mindset, and that is, what are we doing every day for the long-term best interests of this region? And, I spent 18 years doing that, and I want to do it again. That's why I'm here.
Dr. Plummer, same question regarding, transparency lane of water conservation and flood mitigation.
Yeah, so one thing that we have to do better is if we go to the voters and ask for them to vote on a bond and we get the bond passed, and then we tell them later that we're short $100 million, specifically Harris County flood control. And we do that over and over and over again. I mean, I can cite many situations, LBJ. I mean, there's so many situations that voters went and voted for something and they didn't see it come. And then when it's short, we have no understanding of where that shortfall is going to show up. And what we found historically is it shows up in Black and brown communities. And so the first thing we need to do is when we put a bond forward and voters vote for it, we have to keep our word, and we have to make sure that we've also built the capacity to get the shovels and the ground fast enough, because years and things change. Right now we've got tariffs and all the other challenges, more expensive materials, et cetera. And that's why they're saying they don't have the money to do it. And so also have to work with our municipalities, right? The city of Houston, because of the misallocation of drainage dollars, we're in the hole about $415 million. Do we have the capacity? Do we have the capacity to spend those resources? When are we going to do it? One thing that I was able to do on my way out was have a conversation with Public Works at the City of Houston and put a separate dashboard for people to go in and see that $415 million is being spent this specific way, and these are where the projects are going. That's transparency, especially when we're, dealing with a specific, lawsuit. And so I think when people want the city or the county, they want the county to be able to thrive in the right way, but they also want to know that when they say it's okay to do it, and here's my very hard-earned money, taxpayer dollars, to get it done, that we as the electeds get it done in the right way, in the most transparent way possible. And when, from a resiliency perspective, I'm just going to give you kind of one example. Kashmir Gardens was a resiliency hub, but there was nothing resilient about it, nothing at all. And we were able to get a generator funded for Kashmir Gardens, and fast. We did it in 6 months. That is what people want to see. We lose the hope of people because they don't see it happening fast enough in their communities. And then when we ask them to go vote, they don't go vote because they're like, I don't see it working for me. And so from a transparency perspective, if we get the money, let's get the job done, let's see people, and then we move forward and continue to allow people to be happy and pleased with their government.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue to our final question, because the transparency, hits everything that the Harris County judge position would need. But specifically, this question is on how to protect Harris County voting integrity from the state. We've seen, reports about the president asking for voter records and information on voters, and it can get a little dystopian. I don't want to scare people, and obviously that the clerk is not the clerk is ultimately in charge of oversight for the election. However, I do think you all have vested interest in, the integrity of this election. What are your thoughts on, where we currently stand with having a safe election in the primaries, as you both are running for Harris County judge, obviously not only as a position of running, but as a citizen? What are you seeing, Mayor Parker, first with you, that either alarms you or gives you hope, or what would you say to people who are concerned about voting integrity and the safety of the election?
Elections in America are free and fair, and local elections officials do a fantastic job. And until Donald Trump decided to poison the minds of Americans, you would find a unanimity across the country of folks who believed that their neighbors who were responsible for conducting the elections were doing it fairly and with everyone's best interest in mind. At the local level, Tanisha Hudspeth does an outstanding job of managing the elections. She is transparent in what she does, and unfortunately, local elected officials who are in charge of the voting process across the country are under unprovoked attack, and it is undermining faith in our democracy and in voting, and it's wrong, and it's hurtful to the process, and it is insulting to the people who work so hard. And again, think about the people who are actually in those polling places. These are our neighbors. These are our friends. These are our family members. This is not some scary out there force. These are Americans doing their civic duty, and we ought to be supporting them instead of tearing them down. And I have complete faith in the process here in Harris County for both this election and next fall's election. Unfortunately, we are under attack, not just from Washington, but also by political opportunists, Ken Paxton, Greg Abbott, who are, again, trying to undermine confidence of people in voting because they want to lower the turnout. They want to keep people away from the ballot box. And we have to speak out about it and reject election denial whenever we hear it.
Dr. Plummer, your thoughts?
Yes, I mean, I want to give all praise to Tanisha. She's done a phenomenal job with all the challenges. I mean, we've got bullies in at the state level that are really trying to affect us. And they're doing it because they know that we've got so much power here in the Houston and Harris County. Just have what we do here obviously translates a lot of times to other states, right, nationally. And so it's really important. I'll give you two quick examples. My grandmother at 98, I took her to the drive-in, and I told her to drop her ballot in, and she said, no. I want to put it in someone's hands because I don't trust them. That is what our seniors feel like. I tell people, I talk to our seniors all the time. They're like, I'm like, are you going to do a mail-in ballot? No, baby, I'm going, and I'm going to go vote because I want to get my vote casted. Yesterday, I went to go vote for C18, and although we got 2 more days, you can only vote by provisional ballot. So you have to sit there 15 minutes, sit in front of a judge. They have to do a provisional ballot for you. They're going to put it in an envelope and mail it in. These are all levels of causing challenges and making us turn away and go do something else, because it makes it so hard. And so, they would not be messing with us if they did not know how powerful we are. It is voter suppression on every single level. And so we have to stay awake we have to make sure that we give the support and the power to our county attorney, who would be fighting these fights. If they were to come in and try to take something over, I am incredibly confident that's not going to happen. And once again, this conversation is another distraction from the state to have people not want to go vote or be discouraged to go vote. And this is a really important election. And so I'm hoping and praying that we just keep our blinders on. We go do what we need to do. You vote for the person that you believe in, and we get this thing done.
Absolutely. And with that, we obviously will continue the conversation. John Lomax's reporting will continue to cover this race as well as all of the others. Coming up on HC Live, we have more primaries candidates coming through to meet and take you all's questions. We have Commissioner Dexter McCoy and Judge KP George for the Fort Bend judge race coming up, as well as the Texas Agriculture Commissioner race. Sid Miller and Nathan Sheets will be joining us later this month into February for both of those. So stay tuned, follow HC Live's newsletter, HoustonChronicle.com, to follow all of John's reporting. And we, again, will have this entire interview on our Houston Chronicle YouTube channel up within the next 48 hours. We'll get it up as quickly as possible so that you can share it, send it to your friends, and rewatch it. And thank you again to Mayor Parker and Dr. Plummer, and to John Lomax, of course, our Harris County reporter, for joining us. And thank you to everyone for submitting your questions. And stay tuned. We'll have more primary discussions coming up, and go vote. I think I speak for everyone there and saying go vote. Thank you so much. Take care.